Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. We'll talk to you a little bit about mark-out tools, since the theme for this month is marking, measuring, layout tools. So here's what we got in front of me. There's a lot here, so I'm going to try to just give you a quick brief on them. Start over here, dividers. I think the most accurate way to transfer marks or measurements from one board to another is actually using dividers. Now, I use these for laying out my dovetails. But you want a pair of dividers that are easy to adjust. You have to have something that controls. You can't just use friction ones. They're too easy to move. These have a split nut on them, so you can move that rather quickly. Get it in close and then dial in the last little bit. These are the 4-inch, these are the 6-inch. I actually find these the most accurate when it comes to laying out dovetails. I shouldn't say most accurate. What I meant to say was most convenient. And you want to have two pair. The reason is that one is set for your half pin, one is your tail end pin, and when you're switching and going to the next corner, you don't have to reset them. You just leave them and then everything is going to be identical. Next thing on the list is winding sticks. If you're doing or choosing to do things by hand, you have to be able to determine that your boards are perfectly flat, and winding sticks are what do that. You put this one with the white corners on the back, this one goes on the front. The center dots are so that when you set it on the board, instead of having to guess where the center of the board is and the center of the the winding stick, this one already tells you, so you simply set that center dot in the middle of your board. As you set them like this, one in the front, one in the back, and then sight down the edges, they should be parallel if it is truly out of twist or wind or flat. And you can tell by the amount of white exposure on either side how much they're out, and you adjust accordingly. So they're essential, and they need to be both parallel edges and nice and straight. This is a panel gauge. So before I introduce this, I'll tell you about a marking gauge. Marking gauge is an essential tool for layout. Can't cut dovetails without a good marking gauge. Set your marking gauge for the depth of your cut, and then as you drag that, referencing off the end of the board, the head of the tool and the end of the board, it will leave you a nice crisp mark that distance away, and you go all the way around, and then your mark is going to be precise. Well, the only disadvantage to this is once you get out about that far, there's not enough reference surface here to prevent that from twisting. So if you're trying to mark or cut a board a specific width, you need to use a panel gauge. It's just a big marking gauge. You'd go ahead and set that. I actually tap that wedge free, set it for whatever the width is going to be, referencing from your cutter to the inside of this rabbet. You would lock that in place just by tightening up the wedge, and then as you reference against the opposite corner, you're going to leave yourself a nice precise mark out here. Really essential. There's your dovetail marker. Well, I can't cut dovetails without it. This is how we lay them out. It provides you with a hardwood setting on one side, a softwood setting on the other. And by the way, I wouldn't have just one marking gauge. If you're cutting dovetails, actually if you're doing anything, you're going to find it's nice to have two marking gauges. One is going to be set for one particular function, and you don't have to keep switching it back and forth. Now, squares. How do you get by without steel squares? We found this brand called PEC. And what's so great about them is they have the accuracy of the really high-end stuff, but a fraction of the price. This 12-inch steel square in a well-known brand could easily be over 500 US, and this is under 100. You got to have an engineer square. I prefer this over any other style. That's the 12-inch. We have it in a 12, 9, 6, 4, 3, and 2. And what's nice about this is it allows you to get into tight spots. I also use this when I'm checking how flat the surface is between my two pins when I'm cutting dovetails. Great stuff. And this is my sliding T-bevel. And this is great for copying angles and transferring it from one spot to another. So there's lots of layout tools. If I were to choose, okay, what out of this group would I think is most essential? I'd say my marking gauge is number 1. My square is number 2. My dividers would be number 3. And if you allow me one more, I would probably pick my winding sticks, just because I really enjoy doing things with hand tools only. Get really good gear. The better your marking tools, the better your measuring tools, the more accurate your work, the more satisfying it's going to be. When you're building something like a chest of drawers, you want those drawers worked with a kind of precision that allows you to close it by pushing in one corner. That requires a level of precision that you're not going to be able to obtain if you're using ineffective, lower quality marking tools. And I'm not trying to convince you to buy ours, but we carry a brand that I'm comfortable enough with that this is what I use myself. Hope this helps.